All right, let's get started. Hello, this is Kevin McCain with Kevin McCain Studios and artzealots.com. And today we're going to go ahead and do value on a sphere. I'm using graphite pencils. I have a variety of different graphite pencils. They're all good. The ones I'm going to be using today are 4H, 2H pencil, an HB pencil, a 2B pencil, and a 4B pencil. And I have just different variations of each one of these, though it looks like I put all the Prismacolor up here, which worked just fine. So first off, we're going to do, like I said, we're going to study value on a sphere. And so I've got I've got a little sphere that I've kind of lightly, because we're doing value, I didn't want to play around with contour or line. We'll do that later. But I went ahead and I just had a little template very quickly that I went ahead and used to trace it with. 10 tuna cans. They're great. Don't be afraid to use them. Perfect circle. So that way we can take the drawing off the table in terms of the contour. So we can just deal with the shading itself. The first thing, I've got a picture of this sphere that I'm going to be doing. And the thing to remember about a sphere is that you have a light family and a dark family, or a light family and a shadow family. Within the light family, we have highlight, we have light tones, and we have middle values. Within the shadow family, we have the core shadow on a round object, the dark tones, and then reflected light. And so I've got that picture there, and then this I'm going to go ahead and do a quick study, or show you how we would actually go about getting the value put on this sphere. Now I start with a very graphic line to show me where the difference between where the shadow family is and where the light family is. I'm going to go ahead and fill this entire shadow shape with a value. It's going to look like a crescent moon by the time I'm done. Now I'm just loosely laying this in. I'm using the handhold where holding it like this, and I'm keeping my hand off the paper, and I'm using my whole arm like this to create that value. I'm letting the weight of the pencil make that value. I want to go ahead and let the pencil lay flat on there. I don't want to be having that pencil flop up and down. I don't want that. I'm going to bring this value out here to this line a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and transition to a 2H to do that, because my other pencil was just a little darker than what I wanted. And so I just went ahead and grabbed a 2H, which is a lighter pencil. And that way I have a little more control over those light tones. There we go. So I went ahead and Got those parts filled in that I needed to. Now this assures the reason I put all this in here in the shadow side is because this assures that nothing will be as light as anything on the shadow family. If I continue to shade this, or create value within this sphere, shouldn't be using the word shade, I should be using the word value, and I come across into the light family while I'm still working the shadow side of the family, that ensures that I have graphite on both sides so that my shadow family will continue to darken as well as my light family. And that will just help me again. It'll help it so this will never get darker than this over here. And for right now, I'm trying to transition the shadows into those lights a bit. I'm keeping my touch very soft, very light, as I come in here and I'm creating my middle values. I'm continuing that on into my light tones. Now if I need to, again, I want to keep the drawing as clean as possible so I can use a sacrificial piece of paper to cover keep my hand from touching the paper so the oils of my hand don't get on the paper. Now one thing about graphite is the more you build it up, the better it looks. So I'm going to continue building up some of this graphite. I'm going to do it into my midtones, which bleed into a little bit, they kind of merge, it seems, or soften as it gets to the shadow family. And then I'm going to continue to deepen the shadow family quite a bit. Okay. Now I'm continuing to build this up, and I can still see separation, and it may not be apparent on this camera. It may just be a little too subtle, because my eyes can see a little bit more than what this camera, or any camera for that matter, can pick up. But I'm going to start putting in my shadow family since I haven't really darkened them at all. Now on a round object, right where it turns to shadow that's where you're going to have your core shadow happen on your sphere. And that's core shadow is the darkest part, because the sphere is round. As it turns into shadow, and then it continues to turn, and it turns into back towards the light. And that's what the core shadow is. It's only on a round object, so it would be on a sphere, an egg shape, a cylinder, so like a can or a canister or anything like that. It would be round, of course, on one side, if it's round and not square or some other wild thing. But normally we think as cans of soup or what have you as, again, very much cylinders. Trees would be cylinders. I mean, technically the trunk of a tree is just a little complex cylinder. Arms, limbs, just those sorts of things are all cylinder shapes. And so they're going to have this core shadow, where again, because it's round, the darkest part isn't on the edge. The darkest part is right next to where this falls into the shadow family. As I come out towards this edge right here, we're going to have a little bit of what's called reflected light. That's where light reflecting off of something else is bouncing back into this and making it lighter a little bit. And I need to build this up because it's not quite there yet, but I'm going to create that illusion of reflected light, I'm not going to do it by pulling this out with an eraser if I don't have to. Not that I couldn't, but as long as I don't have to. But I'm going to do it by darkening all these tones in here and leaving this a little lighter. And again, I'm just going to continue to build this up by going over it. Now, I'm not going to get out a smudging tool, not for graphite. Graphite, whenever you smudge graphite, if you're not very, very careful, it just looks dirty. Part of that is just the nature and the composite of graphite. They actually mine graphite. It's a type of it's got a lot of minerals in it that gives it that sort of sheen. And when you push that into the paper, it just, like I said, it just looks like dirt. There's some people that do quite effective techniques with lightly blending with brushes and things like that, and that can be effective, but never put your fingers on it. It'll look awful. If you ever do a softening technique, always remember you just don't soften and then leave it. You almost always, at least those that really know what they're doing, it's a good practice to go back in and develop that softened area a little bit with a pencil or an eraser or some other tool. But if you just, again, soften and leave it, a lot of times it just doesn't have that look that you want. It can look kind of dirty and not have that sheen. The sheen from graphite comes from this stuff standing on top of the paper, and once you push it in, it just loses all its luster. And it's also the way the graphite sticks and collects to itself. It just gets, it's a lot nicer as you build it up on the surface than when you push it in. Now, charcoal is a little different. You can use quite a bit of blending techniques with charcoal, and they look quite nice. It's just that these two mediums are very, very different. And you need to treat them a little differently. And that's all I'm saying. Is know your medium, respect your medium, and then use it and control it. Now, hopefully this is starting to emerge, start to have some of some of that depth we're looking for. Now the pencil I'm using is a 2B pencil. 2B pencil is a soft pencil. I can start to get some of these darker darks with my 2B pencil, and that's what I want to use it for, is getting those richer darks. With graphite sometimes it can be hard to really get some really nice darks. Now I'm also not pressing too hard. I want to leave the paper texture intact for as long as possible. That way, if for some reason I had to erase something, let's say I was doing an orange and I was erasing into it a texture or doing a couple different techniques, I might want to be able to take this area really quite light, and if I've destroyed the texture by pressing too hard, I can ruin my ability to edit and kind of push stuff around and work with it. So I'm using a very light technique here, very soft handhold. Or not really, the handhold really isn't quite so soft. I misspoke. But the pressure I'm putting on this is really quite light on the pencil. So the pencil tip does not have a lot of pressure on it. So I'm allowing the pencil itself to build up that value. If I don't think that 2B is going to give me enough of the darks I need, I can come in here with a 4B to just get a little bit more depth, a little more darkness, darker values. That'll give me just that nicer bit of contrast. Probably hearing that table shake a little bit as I work on this. So I'm trying to hurry this a little bit more than normal. And now this is getting dark enough that it's really starting to emerge. Now usually I'll have, depending on the table, if this is sitting on a table or whatever the surface is sitting on, you're going to have not just reflected light over here, but a lot of times because you have light hitting a surface and bouncing into this, usually your brightest reflected light will be down here. So I want to make sure that I don't kill that. I think I'm going to transition up to a 2H for this right here, so I can. 2H is a harder pencil. It's a little lighter. Puts down a lighter mark with the same amount of pressure, so it can just help me to control what's going on down here a little better. And come over here and just kind of clean this up a bit. And once again, I'm going to take this now. I'm going to use this to go back into the darks, just because the one thing about softer pencils is they reveal more of the texture, so they sit up on the tops of the valleys of the little texture. They sit on the tops, whereas my harder pencils, with the same amount of pressure, will push graphite a little bit further into those valleys, because since the pencil is harder, it's kind of pushing down into that texture just a little bit, even though I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure on it. And so I can take this area that's got these little dots, because those dots are just the paper texture, and I can use this 2H, or I could use an HB for the same thing, or 4H, and people might call this polishing, but it's not really polishing it as much as it's taking out the little dots. It's putting in some value into those, and so it's darkening this down and making this just a lot nicer. right back up into the shadow again. The shadow family. I'm going to clean this up. I want to make sure that this isn't too harsh of an edge where this turns. So I don't want it to look like a line, but I do want it to be very distinct where that transition is happening. So now we're starting to really get this to look dark to light. This is going to be curving this way, especially if my light is, this is the direction of my light. Then this is going to most likely be turning away as it goes up and getting a little darker. So I can go ahead and very softly start to bring a little bit more darker value in here. Trying to make it look like it's going from dark to light this way as well as dark to light that way. And that can really help the illusion. Build it up through here a little bit because this is my middle values. This is my light values. So I'm going to build up my middle values just a little bit more. Oops. I just had a mark be more distinct than what I wanted. That's alright, I just go ahead and go back over it a few times and it starts to blend in. Now I'm going to come back into this shadow family again. I think I'm going to grab a 2B again. Just make sure that this is still, I'm not losing it here. Alright, now if this starts to get like it's too much of a band, like right up here, then I'm going to come up here and just feather it out just a bit. In other words, just extend it with a little bit more value, and that will just soften that edge real quick. One thing that I haven't got on here is I don't have the cast shadow, so I'm going to go ahead and put that cast shadow in there, and it changes here a little bit from the way I first drew it. Alright, where this sits here, it's going to be the darkest part where it touches. It's right where it touches on that surface. It's going to be fairly dark, and then it's going to kind of cast a little darker shadow around that. Remember that cast shadows have value in them, dark to light. That's the most important thing to remember about cast shadows. Then I'm going to bring this on out. Now I can also, if I have the time, and I don't have the time here, but your edge on that shadow will get more crisp and softer as it gets away from you. The way to do that with graphite is I can put a lighter tone, bring this lighter tone over here into my shape here. So this would be my lighter tone. And then I can fill the darker tone into it and come up just before I hit that edge so that it keeps that edge a little softer. And then I can keep the other edge as it comes further back a little harsher by not kind of, you can call this feathering or, softening your edge. Same sort of name for concept is the same. So I can bring that in here. Alright. Now I'm going to grab my 4B again, I believe, and I'll take that piece of paper out so I can move my hand here a little bit more quickly. And I want to put just a little more value in here for this cast shadow. Alright, that's good. So, going very dark very quickly. My hand's moving very quickly. I still don't want to go, I don't want to go jet black on this. I don't want to go really dark too quickly. So, I can keep this much more distinct, this line, and then have it fade to where it kind of has this transition out here of these different values, just to make it look like it's a little softer. And I'm going to come back around here because this is going to be the darkest point. Right under here will be our darkest part.